Let's then cross over then to our SABC International News editor, Sophie Mokoena. Very good evening to you, Sophie. All right, talk to us about what's happening. I see the plane is slowly moving, of course, to the stairwell there, as, of course, we had been anticipating the arrival of President Xi Jinping. I did see some fanfare around the red carpet. Take us through what's currently happening there where you are at OR Tambo.
Yes, indeed, the plane has landed. I'm sure you can see the plane. The plane has landed now, and it will soon come to a stop. We expect that the protocol team will take the positions, and also the military, as you know, that with an activity like this, or the arrival, you do have some activities. Secondly, you have cultural activities where you will see South Africa demonstrating and showcasing its culture. But as you can see, the plane has landed. Air China, a huge plane. We expect President Xi Jinping tomorrow to engage President Cyril Ramaphosa during the state visit. High on the agenda, of course, will be trade and investment. As you know that currently China is the largest trading partner of South Africa flow.
Sophie, we had, of course, heard about these engagements that you allude to between President Xi Jinping of China, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. I want to talk to some of those issues that they will be engaging on, because it was also understood that China is wanting to pursue or rather push for what is being called, expanded membership that could include countries like Argentina, as I understand, Iran, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and of course here 20 other governments who really want to be part of this particular bloc. One might ask the question, what is the sort of agenda of China wanting more of these nations being brought into this bloc? Certainly on their side, it would seem that it's an issue of trade. It's an issue of being even bigger when it comes to being a trade partner, not only of in Africa, but other nations as well. But what is the understanding of how far those engagements would go in terms of the BRICS bloc? Because one would assume they'd have to involve the other BRICS nations.
Well, what I do know is that China, South Africa, and Russia are for the expansion of BRICS. And we know that President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday pointed out that that is South Africa's position. And therefore, you saw China earlier on reaching out to countries such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, and that was a clear indication that there was a process of lobbying because these countries want to join the BRICS family. And President Xi Jinping does support the expansion. There were quite a number of engagements and meetings by the officials looking at this, because you'd recall this matter came up at the last summit, and therefore now this summit has to discuss this matter, and therefore officials were tasked with responsibility to look at the modalities or perhaps the recommendation in terms of how this expansion can be done. But South Africa does support the expansion because we know that South Africa did benefit. You know that when it started, it was BRIC. and now it's BRICS, which speaks to the expansion. And therefore, I think tomorrow President Ramaphosa and President Xi Jinping, before they attend the meeting of other leaders, this is something that they are going to discuss. We know that foreign affairs ministers of BRICS are meeting tomorrow to look at the document that was prepared by the officials on this issue. And after tomorrow, they will then give a document to heads of state and government of the BRICS to take a decision in terms of the expansion.
Very interestingly, I understand that Xi Jinping is making only his second overseas trip this year, and we are hearing reports that it's due to the troubles mounting over a domestic economic slowdown. One would be concerned to hear that China is also experiencing domestic economic slowdown. How much do we know about that, and is it true, the reports that this may be linked to the reason why this is Xi Jinping's only second overseas trip this year? And I mean, we're heading towards the end of the year as it is, so it's quite strange that this would only be his second overseas trip.
You'd recall that there were changes in terms of the Communist Party of China, but also in relation to government. And after COVID-19 or during COVID-19, China did implement tough measures, and he didn't travel much. Even this year, he didn't travel much. On the issue of the sluggish economy of China, yes, that's what we are told by economists. But in terms of China, China is saying the economy is growing and they don't have any problem. And therefore, it depends who's doing an analysis. But you know that because of the war in Ukraine, because of COVID-19, all these countries are trying to ensure that they rebuild the economy, because some of the measures that were implemented were very tough in China in particular, and they did affect the economy. And therefore, there is truth in terms of challenges of the economy, but also you have powerful countries such as Germany, countries such as the United States of America struggling also to revive the economy. You know that this is a big challenge for President Joe Biden ahead of the elections next year, the presidential elections. And therefore, I think the analysis by the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, you would recall that at some point in time 2 years ago when he was delivering the Nelson Mandela lecture, he spoke about a new deal. This new deal, the aim was to ensure that you revive the global economy, and the developed North is committed to assisting the developing South and the poorer countries. And therefore, I think all countries are experiencing the economic challenges. You know, in our country, we have similar problems, and therefore, I think it is a global problem. I expect the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, on Thursday to touch on these issues, because you really have to address the challenges. You know, climate change has also contributed to the economic challenges, Flo.
We'd heard President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that, the state visit by his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, is an opportunity to deepen collaboration with China. And one might say, are those collaborations not deep enough? Are we not already so entrenched with each other, within each other, in each other's tentacles with China? I mean, what more can the two countries do together? I mean, as you earlier rightly mentioned that, they are our biggest trading partner. So, what more can we establish? And obviously this is some of the things that they'll be discussing.
I think technology in particular, you know that the country is quite advanced in relation to technology, the fourth industrial revolution, but also how you use artificial intelligence in such a way that it doesn't harm the nations. The other issue is the electricity. You know, South Africa is currently grappling with the power challenges, and China had promised that they will assist South Africa. I also know that the BRICS summit, you would recall there were talks that it is not going to happen in South Africa, it will be virtual. It is President Xi Jinping who insisted that the BRICS summit must go ahead, it must be in person, and it must be in South Africa. I was told 3 months ago that he even made an undertaking that if it means he must assist South Africa to address the challenge of the electricity, he is prepared to do so. And therefore, I think these are some of the issues that the two countries can look at in terms of collaboration or perhaps working together. But the only thing that also must receive attention is the trade imbalance. You know that it's skewed in favor of China, and you want to increase that. The issue of beneficiation in South Africa, but also on the continent. You know that many leaders on the continent have pointed out that the time has come for Africa to be able not only to send raw materials, but they must be able to export the products so that they can get better returns. And I think these are some of the issues that the two leaders are going to discuss. The issue of the automobile, the motor industry, you know that we now have motor industry that is really developing around the world, and we saw some cars from China, many of these cars quite affordable, and I think that's another sector to explore, Flo.
All right, I'm looking at the live visuals on the screen. Sophie, of course, you're closer to the action than any of us at this point. I see that there is a procession by the South African National Defence Force at this point. Talk us through this particular procession. Of course, no doubt it is one to indeed welcome the Chinese president. No doubt we'll be seeing him coming down those stairs, descending in a short while. But take us through what you're seeing there and what's happening at the moment.
Yes, you are correct. The military, the officials who are here, they are now ready. You can see even the cars, the convoy. The cars are coming closer, and therefore I think he is about to come out. We see people also who are supposed to perform some traditional activities from different persuasions coming closer, and car, as you can see, driving near the red carpet. And I think that moment has arrived for the president of China to come out of the plane.
And which official is set to receive him? I think, earlier see Minister Naledi Pandor at some point. But who are the officials that have, of course, been tasked with receiving the Chinese president from OR Tambo?
Yes, you are correct. The Minister of International Relations, I was told she will be here to receive the Chinese head of state. And I think you can hear we are moving back. You can see that now there's a hive of activity, but I think the Minister of International Relations is going to come very soon.
And let's talk to the history of it all. And I know, Sophie, you're very much about that. But, you know, we're hailing this year as marking 25 years.
The president is on his way. I think he's going to be received by the president floor.
All right, all right. Thank you for confirming that. We'll certainly await to see if the president indeed will be receiving his counterpart from China. But of course, what I did want to talk about is the fact that, you know, this year marks 25 years of diplomatic ties between South Africa and the People's Republic of China. And as you say, the largest trading partner or with South Africa. Let's talk to the history of the two nations. Clearly a solid relationship built between the two. What can you tell us, Sophie?
Yes, you are correct. Solid relationship flow. And you know that, as I pointed out earlier on Full View, that the relationship dates back to exile years. You know that the Communist Party of China supported the South African Communist Party and the ANC, and that relationship is continuing. They are still very close, and you know that recently the Secretary General of the ANC was in China, and you know that many delegations from the governing party and the South African Communist Party did visit China, and that happened recently, and therefore I think you'll agree with me that the relationship is very strong. I mean, you can see the fact that the president is here to receive the president of China. It speaks to the strong relationship between the two countries. You can see President Ramaphosa has just arrived and he's going to the plane. As you can see, the protocol and the defense force now ready. The president is moving, taking steps. I think he is going to receive the president of China, and a clear demonstration in terms of the relationship between the two countries.
Yeah.
Flo?
Sophie, I think it's quite interesting, of course, that China has been criticized over years about, you know, human rights issues and human rights violations. And you have South Africa, who, you know, prides itself in, you know, upholding human rights, prides itself in having, you know, the best constitution and the best human rights laws. Isn't it surprising that there hasn't been, you know, a conflict between the two countries regarding something quite important, you know, where it seems that the two are at odds?
You know what, South Africa always talk about the South African foreign policy that's anchored on human rights and respect for human rights. And they always point out that they don't engage in megaphone diplomacy. There comes President Xi Jinping, you can see him, and therefore these issues, clearly they do discuss these issues behind the scenes. And you know that yesterday the minister pointed out that much as South Africa gets a flag in terms of having friends, but no friend is perfect. And I think that's the approach, that no country is perfect, and if you want to engage and change people, you have to talk to them behind the scenes. You don't engage in a megaphone diplomacy. You know, that has been the approach. With former presidents also doing the same where there are global issues. But South Africa yesterday, the president was clear in terms of the South African foreign policy anchored on peace, security, and also respect for rule of law and respect for human rights. But yeah, it gets tough, particularly when these issues are debated at United Nations Human Rights Council. At the Security Council, it's much easier because countries such as China have veto powers, and therefore, yeah, they use the power they have.
I thought I saw more officials than what we had earlier discussed. I see Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is there. I think I also saw Peggy Cele in the background somewhere there. I think I also did spot Naledi Pandor. So a huge group of the cabinet that came indeed to support the president as he welcomes his Chinese counterpart. I'm not sure who I missed there, Sophie, but maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, it's a huge... Yes, you are correct. I saw Minister Cele, the Minister of Police. I saw Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the Minister for Youth, Women and People with Disability. And also I saw the President. And I think it speaks to what we spoke about earlier on, that this is no ordinary country in terms of the relationship between South Africa and particularly the governing party and its alliance components. You know that, the relationship is quite strong. And I am not surprised to see the very senior cabinet ministers and the president here at OR International Airport at night, very late at night, I must say.
There's a pause there for the President Xi Jinping to observe the African dancers and entertainment, I suppose, brought to welcome him there. What can you see from your point there where you're standing?
I'm struggling to catch, the sentence. You know that sometimes with high security area like this, it's very difficult to hear. Can you repeat, please, Flo?
I'm talking about the fact that I'm watching them observing or the entertainment that's been brought there to welcome the Chinese president, and what's taking place there as from where you are standing at this point.
The car is now leaving, Flo, and I see ministers who are waiting and the president. I am going to try my luck. It's very difficult, but I hope the security is not going to push me aside. I will try and just get a word from the president how he feels at this moment after all the activities. Let's try, Flo. Let's wait and see. But you can see the president is still enjoying, the performance by different people who are rendering this performance, demonstrating different cultures. And behind the president, you can see Minister Cele, Minister of Police, and I also saw Minister Naledi Pandor.
Yeah. Do we have an idea? Do we have an idea at this point, Sophie, of?
Let's try. Mr. President, how are you?
Very well, very well.
Your guests are arriving now, sir.
Guests are arriving, so it's going to be a wonderful BRICS summit, and tomorrow we have a state visit.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I know you have a lot of work. We are live on SABC. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, sir. That's President Ramaphosa there. He's quite happy and saying that Tomorrow it is the state visit in the morning, and later, of course, he will then have a meeting with the leaders of BRICS. That's ahead of the main one on Wednesday. And Flo, I think I've done my part. I've tried. It's an early morning tomorrow, and it's a long week.